Hello, this is John Kramer with the I Don't Have Any Time Hour a Day book marketing plan. This is a very simple plan on how you can begin to expose yourself as a novelist to a much wider audience, to your targeted audience, the people that you think would be the most likely to read, in this case, your romance novelist, because again, we're talking about Lovapalooza. And so I have an article, the book marketing bestsellers.com. I don't have any time, hour a day program. And I wanted to show you again, this is the actual article that I have on my bookmarketingbestsellers.com website. And you can see I write about it. I have this long article on it. And the first step is to go by and do what I call research. So the first thing you want to do is each day do some research to find at least one high traffic targeted website or podcast related to your book's topic. If while you're writing your book you come across websites, start collecting them. But this is the actual step by step of what to do when you start doing and wanting to market your novel. So again, you will start to want to discover some of those websites. You may also ask your friends what websites they like to visit or what podcasts they like to listen to that are related to romance novels or whatever it is that your topic is for your book. You can also ask your favorite librarian this information, or you can ask people on your social networks. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you three different websites that are really useful for finding the kind of targeted podcasts and websites that could be useful for reaching out to an audience. So, one of the first sites that you can go to is Listen Notes. Uh, and I'm going to pull up a little uh, thing, Listen Notes at listennotes.com. I wanted to be able that you can read it. It's a wonderful website, and it's actually, in my experience, the best website for finding the kind of information that you want to find, the podcast that you want to target. It's one of the best out there in terms of finding podcasts that you might want to connect with. So that's Listen Notes. And again, here's what it looks like when you type in romance novels. It comes up with 10,000 websites in less than a minute. And you can go through and you can see some of the different, excuse me, websites that feature romance novelists. Now, one of them right here is Therapy for Black Girls. If you're a black woman writing romance novels, this is, that podcast is going to be very valuable to you and you would want to check it out. Now, for most of you, probably the best podcast that you'll find that features romance novels is What to Read Next. And it's a wonderful little podcast, and you can look at it here, and then you can click on it, and it shows you more information about the podcast. It's got a high listen score. It's in the top 2.5% of all podcasts in the world. So, it's well listened to. And now what you want to do is you want to go to what to read next blog.com. That's where you can find out more information. But right here, you can also, within the listing here, you can find out the name of the person that does the podcast, Laura Yamin, and you can find out a little bit more about the podcast. They do interviews, author interviews with different people. So you get an idea of what they are. And that's what you can do with Listen Notes. And again, you can come back to this. And because they have 10,000 listings related to romance novels, chances are you can probably find at least 5 or 10 podcasts that would be relevant to you as a romance novelist. Now, if you don't write romance novels, but you're still here at Lovapalooza, you can type in whatever topic you want: book marketing, uh, whatever your topic is. It might be, relationships. It might be, you know, uh, wild Cajun cooking or something like that. So you have an opportunity to find different things. Now, what you want to do then is that's one of the really great ways to find out more about the podcast you're interested in. Now, the second website I want to encourage you to go to is Matchmaker.fm. And here's my guest profile for people that want to interview me. If they want to interview me about book marketing on their podcast, they can go to my profile at on Matchmaker.fm and find out more about me. Now, here's what the profile looks like in real time. This is my profile, and you can see there's a little thing up here, and that's messages. And here are some of the different messages of people wanting to connect with me, either to be an interview on one of my 4 podcasts. I have 4 of them, or they want me to be a guest on one of their podcasts. So it sets up a way to communicate with people within Matchmaker FM. Now, the neat thing about it is that when you set up a guest profile, you can actually set up links to 10 different websites. So your main website, your podcast website, your Snip feed or Buy Me Coffee or Patreon websites, your social media, your Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. So you can provide 10 links to your different websites, social media, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, different profiles like that. And that really is a great way to get people to be connected with you and to get a good SEO value as well. So you can go into Matchmaker and you can go to the main page, and or you can find a guest. So you can click on Find a Guest, and here are some guests that are being featured, and you might want to look at those, but you might want to filter it by category. So let's say books. That's going to narrow it. You can actually type in here in the search romance novels. And this is a way to find people that are willing to talk about romance novels. Now, some of them seem to be pretty relevant, some are not. So again, you'd have to look at that and think about it. Now, that's to find guests for your podcast. If you want to find a show to be featured on, you click on the Find Show tab up here. And again, you would type in romance or romance novels. You could do romance, just romance if you wanted to. Now we got some wonderful Kiss and Tell, a podcast all about, I'm not sure what it's all about things romance. There's Steamy Stories podcast, so you could go through and check out and see what else there is. My Romance Lounge, that one could be very good. It's an exploration of the romance literary industry, and that might be worth doing. And so you can check there as well. So that's some of the things you can do with Matchmaker FM that will help you to reach out to people. Now, the other main website, now I've talked about listennotes.com and matchmaker.fm. The other main website is Google, a search engine. Uh, Google is still probably the best search engine, but I also often use DuckDuckGo, and you could also use Bing. But what I've typed in is romance novels 2022. I figured that by typing in 2022, you actually get more of the current information. If you type in romance novels, you could get something that was written even 10 years ago. So you can see best romance novels coming out in 2022. Uh, you can see Entertainment Weekly. Um, she reads romance books, which is one that I would recommend you connect with first. But you could also connect with popsugar.com, and so on. I would avoid amazon.com. I would avoid Wikipedia, because you really can't interact with them. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't create an author profile on Amazon. And if you can, get your author profile on Wikipedia. But in terms of, being a guest or something like that, they're really not very useful for that. But popsugar.com could be a great place to write a regular column on romance novels if you wanted to. EW, Entertainment Weekly, could be a place that might feature your book. But the one that I like here is She Reads Romance Books, because I think that that's really one of the best ones. I forgot to put this in. Again, here it is, She Reads Romance. Here's the search I did. Google.com, search question mark Q equals romance plus novels plus 2022. Okay, so, but you could go directly to She Reads Romances, and here's that link, shereadsromancebooks.com. And the neat thing here is the Start Here button, because that's where you're going to find out how you can interact with her in the best way. So I'm actually going to take you now to She Reads Romances. And click on Start Here. She says where to start. And welcome to the blog. Here you'll find epic book lists, honest book reviews, new book releases, and so on. Book quizzes, the romance reading challenge, etc., etc. But I think what you want to do is go back up here to Start Here and work with me, because that's going to tell you more about how you can work with her. She has 150,000 visitors a month, 1.3 million visitors a year. So she's got a lot of traffic. Her Alexa rank is, let's see what it is here. It's not going to show up because this, oh, there it is. Around 400,000. So, she's got some good traffic, though. A little bit about her. She's an acupuncturist by day, a romance fan by avocation at night, and she reads over 150 romance books a year. Now, she offers paid advertising. She would volunteer to be a podcast guest on your podcast, which is a great way to create a relationship with her, by inviting her to be a podcast guest on your podcast. And that might lead her to say, hey, I'm interested in your book. I want to know more. Um, she will also write guest posts for your website. And, but she also, you can pay to have, um, to have a sponsored post on her website, some things like that. So you can get a little bit better idea of how you can interact with her. And again, you can also, okay, I thought there was a thing here where you could contact her about, let's see, okay, that's where you find it. Uh, she, I thought she had, but she does encourage you to connect on Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube. And I thought that she had a contact tab, but now I don't see it. Uh, oh, there it is, my contact me page. Let's see where that takes us. So you want to work with me, want me to review your book, check out our review policy, and so on. So you can do that. And she has a Buy Me a Coffee page if you want to support her. And so the main thing is Leslie at shereadsromancebooks.com. That's her email, so you can connect with her. So you can see how you can start to find information about how to connect with people using these three websites: Google, Matchmaker.fm, and listennotes.com. So make sure you make use of those. Now, on my so in the first week, all you're doing is research. You're starting to try to find out some things about those websites. The next thing you want to do in week 2 is to follow the links. Most websites and podcasts and blogs will have links to other related websites and podcasts. And that's one way that you can find out more about, find more links. So you use the three websites I talked about again: Listen Notes, Matchmaker FM, and Google, to find websites and podcasts that you might want to work with. But then you can go and follow their links. For example, if you go to uh, what to read, here's the actual link to um, her blog on what to read next. You'll see that she has, a lot of different information about what she can offer and so on. She has, you should sign, obviously, anytime you find a website you think or podcast that you think you want to connect with, follow them. Follow them. A podcast, you could do it on Listen Notes if you want to, or you could do it on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you tend to listen to podcasts. But you can see that you can also sign up for her newsletter here. But the neat thing is that, I looked through her website, and one of the things I found was a thing called the Frolic Podcast Network. And it turns out that Frolic is an interesting podcast network, frolic.media/podcast. And what you will do when you go there is, let's see if this is, no, that's her working with me. Let's see. Okay, this is Frolic. This is Frolic Podcast. Look at all the different podcasts. They do uh, it's the entertainment brand for modern romance fans. And you can see there's a lot of different podcasts up there that you might want to connect with. And so you can start to click through, look at some of these. And in week 2, that's what you want to do. You want to follow the links that you discovered in week 1, some of the top websites and so on. And you want to see if they're connecting to other websites and whether or not any of those websites would be useful for what you want. Dear Romance Writer might be an interesting podcast. So you could click on that link and you find out a little bit about it. Three romance writers talk about life, love, sex, and work. Their website's at dearromancewriters.com. They have this podcast featured on Frolic Podcast Network. And you can see that they have a certain number of podcast episodes that you can listen to. And you may find that they interview romance novelists. You hope they do, and you go from there. So you can start to interact with them and connect with them. So that's what you're doing when you're following people. Now that was when we were doing what to read and her links. Now we could also go to She Reads Romance Books and see if she has any connections. It turns out that she also links to the Frolic Podcast Network. I didn't see any other real links that she had. Um, but it would be interesting to see if she did. And if you explore it a little bit more, you may find that she has other uh, podcasters or romance sites that she links to. I didn't see any in my exploration, but you might if you go into more detail on it. But that's what you want to do in week 2 is again go back, follow the links, find out if there's other high traffic websites that they recommend, the people you discovered the first week, and connect with them to follow the link. Okay, so then in week 3, you want to go and actually find out who's behind the website and find out what their email address is, their phone number, any contact information, their Twitter handle, Facebook pages, Pinterest boards, LinkedIn profile, Instagram profile, TikTok, YouTube, any other social networks that you could connect with them so that you can start to connect with the people behind the website. And that's what you want to do in week 3. So you've found now in the first 2 weeks somewhere between 5 and 10 viable podcasts and websites that you want to connect with. You may have found 20 or 30, but you've found at least 5 or 10, and you want to really start to connect with them, find out their information, and put that information together in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or a database of some sort. For most of you, you'd probably be most comfortable working in a Word document. So you could create a Word document with the name of the website or podcast, the URL for it, in other words, where to find it on the internet, the name of the person behind the site, their phone number and email address for that contact, and then their social media profiles, and put all of that information into one document or Excel spreadsheet so that you can keep track of all the information that you found. And then, because in week 3 again, um, you want to locate those people. So again, we could go to this what to read next podcast and find out how to connect with her. And the neat thing is she has this thing down here, down at the bottom of her page, want to be a podcast guest. And that's how, if you want to be a guest on her what to read next podcast, author interview, quest, and so on, fill out this form. Your name, first and last name, email, subject. I'd love to be a guest on your podcast, and then write a little bit about why she should be interviewing you for her podcast and what to read next. So talk about where you've been a guest before, talk about the novels you've written, things like that. But this is where you can contact her. And again, you can see here she has an Instagram feed, Pinterest, Twitter, and a Goodreads page. So those are things that you can connect with her. And most people will have something like that. Um, Here's She Reads Romance, and I think we found a contact page for her under, I think, about. What did we find? Uh, there's some things about her. Meet Leslie, connect with me on my contact page. So, and then again, we did look at her work with me page, and you can see that there's her email again. We found that before. Leslie at shereadsromancebooks.com. And let's see, she's got a Facebook profile, a Pinterest profile, and a YouTube profile. The neat thing is when they showcase those social networks, those are the ones that they really want to interact with people. Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube in Leslie's case. So again, that's one way, um, you know, she can connect. She says a nice thing here. She says, I love dirty talkers and happily ever afters, and I help romance book lovers like me find the best books worth reading. So, she's going to be a great connection for you. So that's how you're going to start getting their information. And then in week 4, you're going to start interacting with these people. So you want to tweet their article. You're going to read, some of their articles. You're going to listen to their podcast episodes or read their blog posts and so on. You're going to tweet them. You're going to like and share something that maybe they shared on Facebook. You're going to pin their article, repin their pins, uh, you know, comment on their YouTube videos, share something on Instagram or LinkedIn, blog about their article, podcast about their website, or recommend their website or podcast on your podcast. Those are some of the things you can do in week 4. So every day you should connect, do at least one connection with each of the 5 or 10 main websites and podcasts that you want to connect with. Start sharing their content. It's one of the best ways that you can really start to interact with what they're doing. And so that's really valuable for you. And so retweet them, like what they're doing, pin things, Instagram, LinkedIn, just share, blog about them, write about them, comment on their Facebook, post, comment on their tweet, things like that. You want to start interacting with them. I have people on Facebook that love everything I post, you know. So, and I recognize their name because I see it so often because they've liked something that I've done. If they ever came to me and said, I want to be on your podcast, or I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast, I'm inevitably going to say yes because they've built a relationship with me simply by liking the things that I do or commenting on them. So they're starting to interact with me. They're creating and have created a relationship with me. And that's what you want to do with these key thought leaders who are doing podcasts that you want to be on, writing blog posts or articles, or have a website that features book reviews and author interviews, things like that. So you want to be connected in that way. Then in week 5, you're going to make an offer they can't refuse. And that means you're going to ask them, can I interview you on my podcast? Or you offer to write an article for their website. Some of them accept guest articles. You can offer them an excerpt from your book that they can feature on their website. If they feature excerpts, you can offer to send them a review copy of your book, either as an ebook or as a print book. You can offer to do an interview with them where they interview you. So, if they have an internet radio show, a podcast, um, they do Facebook Live, or they do written Q&A on their blog post, anything like that, you can say, I'd love to be a guest on your blog interviews, on your podcast. If you ever do Facebook Live or YouTube Live or anything like that, you do any Zoom things, Zoom events, and you want somebody to interview, I'd be happy to do it. So you give them different options based on what you know they do because you've already checked out their website, you've already checked out their social networks, so you know how they're already featuring authors. Your job is to ask them to feature you in that same way that they feature other romance novelists or whatever book, however they feature book authors. And then again, you can interview them for your blog or podcast. So there's lots of ways that you can offer something. And I would make an offer to 2 or 3 different websites every day or podcasts during this week 5. And you can go back to them more than once. If the first pitch didn't work and you haven't heard from them in 3 or 4 days, on day 4 or 5, you can pitch them again with another idea. And even in week 6 or 7, you can do that. Now, in week 6, what you're going to do for the most part is you're going to respond to whatever they've done. If you've called them by phone or you emailed them and you've asked them something, then if they ask you, well, I need more information, can you send me a podcast one sheet so I can know what kind of questions I should ask you and things like that? then you could do that. And that's a very simple thing that you can set up as part of this. Um, if they want to set up an interview, schedule it right away. Don't wait to schedule or respond to them. Respond to them the same day, if at all possible. So in week 6, your main focus is on responding to people that have answered the offer you made in week 5. Now, if nobody's responded to you or only one has, well, then go back in week 6 and repitch them with another proposal, so that, and then be ready for a response to give them something right away. And then in week 7, you're going to follow through. Hopefully by week 7, you've actually booked some interviews, and they've actually maybe even done those interviews. The key thing then is that you want to follow up. If they have interviewed you, you want to make sure that if they reviewed your book, featured you in an article, shared you, did some sort of ongoing, Q&A column with you, or shared some things about you on their social networks, you want to come back and thank them. So, and you might thank them publicly, not only thank them directly through email or phone call, but you might actually blog about them and say, hey, check it out. I was just interviewed on this podcast. And share that podcast episode on all your social media, so that you give them some value, you give them some opportunity to get people to come to them, but then you also get the chance to do a little bit more with them. Now, so in week 7, the key thing is that you want to start to build a real relationship with these websites, because your ideal is that if they liked you with one interview, they'll want to come back and do a second interview with you in 3 or 4 months. That's the ideal. You want to be regular, featured regularly, and that's easy for me to say. Um, on their podcast, on their website, things like that, or that they will review your second or third novel, and so on. So you want to create a real relationship with these top influencers who could send a lot of traffic to your website, your podcast, your books on Amazon, and so on and so forth, and possibly even sending a lot of people going into bookstores to ask for your book. Always thank them. I'm surprised by how few people thank people after they've been on a podcast, or been featured by somebody on their in an article on their website, or maybe they featured you as one of the best romance novels to read in 2022, or for summer beach reads, or whatever it might be. If they feature you, thank them. That's really important. So follow through, and really spend the time to actually interact with them and connect with them, make an offer, respond right away, and follow through. And again, your goal is to establish relationships that will be long term and valuable for you. Thank you for listening.